consideration of plan of service for annexation of Jonathan and Johnny Gilbert property, Caney Spring Road. Someone like to speak to that?
Jonathan?
Isaac, I took your advice on the lot line. I got the move. I'll show you what I got on here. I got more.
Track 2. Todd, I have a question. This is for discussion of the plan of services regarding the annexation, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So this is not, our tracks 1 through 5, they don't exist yet. This is just
Exactly. Yeah.
a proposed subdivision
Yes.
in regards to the annexation.
Yeah.
And the annexation is for the entire property, right?
Yes.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and track 6 would be a future. This is conceptually what you plan on doing with the property.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess my question regarding the plan of services, the way we've treated other developments is any infrastructure you need would be at your expense. You know, water, sewer, stuff like that. I mean, so I think outside of that, the annexations we've dealt with in the past few years have been pretty generic. Services are available to you if they're available, and any new infrastructure or line extensions would be your responsibility. Todd, is that how we handled some of them?
It is, yeah, and this is the plan of services that you have to consider recommending tonight is almost identical to the one that we did on Caney Springs Road, 3 years ago, maybe. Now, there is some language because of the issue with respect to water, depending on development, just a qualification that, you know, the annexation is not necessarily guaranteeing that water would be available for all developments. If you were going to do a really large development that might require a lot more water, that would have to be something that, you know, the town would have to address. But so otherwise, yeah, I think it's pretty much in line with what the town has done before.
I do have a question. On this large residential tract, track 2, in the near future, I want to build myself a house there. Can I pump it uphill to the new and tap into the new sewer line? I mean, it's literally right there on the property line.
That would be an engineering question, but if you had the proper check valves and the engineer said that would be okay, I would think that would be your closest and best route. I mean, it may involve some check valves and some other stuff. Assuming the Chapel Hills right of way goes through Debbie Hill's property where it joins yours. If you have to cross Debbie's property to get to the easement for the sewer line, then you would have to secure an easement from her or something. But no, I think for your home, that would be fine. I guess from a planning standpoint, my only comment to that would be track 1, there's no issue because you've got frontage on 31A and on Highway 99. But for tracks 3, 4, 5, and 6, if you came back and wanted to divide that, you would have to your expense lay at a sewer line and a water line. If you did that ahead of building your house, it may make sense to co-op all that together with your house. But if your house is going to come first before you develop tracks 3, 4, 5, and 6, then I think money would dictate where you go for your sewer line, but you would probably be closer to the new Forest Main than you would be the going up to 31A, cutting across country.
Three's my grandmother's house. So
Okay.
it's there. It's already got water, septic, the whole deal. Track 4, I will need water. I have a perk site already done, but I will need water. Right now, the tap is up here at the Marathon
Okay.
for my grandmother's place.
For your water.
And then it runs down to the house.
Sure.
And then I think this lady here has got one coming up there too.
Private service line.
Yeah, so I was kind of curious as to how that was.
Where's
So
your
I think
sewer line at, Calvin?
septic. It's septic. Yeah, so and we've only dealt with this maybe 2 or 3 times since I've been on the board. If you don't have access to sewer and septic is your only option, we've allowed that in the past for people that didn't have access to sewer. This would be a little trickier in my opinion because you own the whole property and the whole property does have access to sewer. So I think that would potentially be another discussion for another day when you come back to subdivide the lots. I don't know if the board or the mayor and alderman, maybe the mayor and alderman's call, but they may desire you to tap into sewer if sewer is available. If you drop below a 5-acre lot, if you divide 5 acres or more, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, a division of 5 acres or more is exempt from coming to this board unless you're rezoning. So if you did tracks 3, 4, and 5 and ran them all the way to 99 and they were all 5 acres or more, it would be my belief you wouldn't have to ask for any.
Acreage does it.
Yeah, they're,
1.72, 1.5.
which again, might keep in mind track 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 2, this is all proposed. This is not
Right now, it's
what we're voting on tonight. It's just, but we appreciate seeing the overview of what your, what your plans are. But I think when you come back to divide this ahead of time, you probably need to talk to the town about water and sewer and what the desire will be. But I know in other developments in the past, we've required, the quote-unquote developer to run the city water line and city sewer line to their lots that they were developing. The one case I can think of on septic was up on Feed Mill Road, maybe. Feed Mill Road, we had somebody, they were building a house for their disabled family member. They literally didn't have any access to sewer. So septic was their only option because they didn't have any sewer available anywhere on the property. And we allowed that. In fact, I think it required a variance because it was creating a flag lot or a lot that didn't conform. No, I think it was Feed Mill. It was the lot, the lot width to depth ratio didn't work, but I think we gave them a variance due to the hardship needing the septic. I don't know if they built it or not, but I think they did get the plat. I think the plat was completed. So as far as septic being available to track 4, I think track 3, the only thing we'd have to know is where the field lines are, where the tanks are, make sure there's proper duplicate. Track 3 if it's serviced by an existing septic, and I know Chandler, you're gonna have the same question come up on yours. But because that's existing, that's different, but for 4, 5, and 6, if sewer is available, I don't know if the city would allow you to do septic or not. We haven't been asked.
If sewer's available, that'd be great.
But sewer would be available at your expense, to run a.
I know when I had a repair, and this was in the county, but I don't know if it's the same here, but I recently had a repair on my house, and since sewer was available, they wouldn't let me get a permit.
In the
to
city
repair
limits of
septic.
Lewisburg, they require you to tap on the sewer
Yeah.
if you
So I don't know if
have a
it's-
problem. If you have a problem, or if you're trying to split your land, they require, if sewer, and the question is if it's available. So that's, which you're close, and then the discussion as far as how big of a line you gotta run and all that would be between your engineer, the city's engineer. Do we require it to be big enough for future growth or only for what you need? That's kind of a catch-22.
Even if they allow it, or we allow it, you still have to pay the sewer bill and they get the money.
That's right.
Yep.
Do you have any questions?
So do you have a proposed plan of service, or is that something?
Yeah, I prepared one. It's
Okay,
packet,
it's
yeah.
pretty much like the ones we've done in the past.
It is, yeah.
As available.
Yeah.
Yep.
What size water line is that?
The one on my grandmother's house right now is a half-inch line.
It's just a
running from
service
the
line.
tap
There's
of the
no-
road, or the meter in the road.
Yeah, so this is half inch coming to.
That's
Yeah,
what my dad
there's
told me.
there's no main line, that's a gas line there,
Right,
G.
okay.
Yeah, so that's a gas line,
say he's
natural,
right.
natural gas line. So there's no actual city water line on Caney Springs Road, it's just probably a private,
Serving all that.
a private tap up here, serving a single residence.
I just sit there and tell you.
So I'd make a motion we move forward with the plan of service? Or do we pass on a recommendation to the?
It is, yeah. What this will be attached with, there'll be two resolutions, 2 months but it'll be attached to, and ultimately at the April meeting, they'll approve the annexation and the plan of services. But this will,
So I'd make a favorable recommendation to pass this on to the.
I have a motion for a favorable recommendation.
I second.
Mr. Zimmerly, I have a second by Mayor Fontaine. Do I have any other discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposition?
You guys can have it.
Motion carries. We're moving on to
I got one.
4B,
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, thank y'all. Appreciate your time.
consideration of plan of services for annexation of Michael Nash property. We have this in front of you, 4B. Right here. Do I have anyone here to speak to that?
Yes, that would be me. Currently, we are not inside the city limits. We are surrounded by the city, but we'd like to be annexed into the city so that we can get water and sewer. We're planning to build a house, second field on that property.
Do you own parcel 6 and 601?
No, just 6.
Just 6? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Does the city limits take in just the roadway right there, or is any of your property in the city limits or none at all?
None of my property
Okay,
is.
so
but-
it literally just goes around you?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. And I see the
Plan of services.
plan of service looks like it's consistent with what
it is, yeah.
with what we just talked about on Jonathan's.
Do you know if 601 is in the?
I don't think it is.
It's not either,
Yeah, I don't
okay.
think, because the,
We're just gonna annex this one.
Correct.
and you don't own 601?
No, sir.
Okay, so that's somebody else.
Correct.
Somebody else.
I know a large portion of this property is in the floodplain, so
Correct.
if you do ever plan on developing your property, you would have some issues to work out specifically with floodplain. But in regards to the annexation and plan of services, I think it's pretty cut and dry because the city's all the way around it, except the rear.
Yeah.
Is parcel 118, I guess, is in the city limits?
See, I haven't verified that. I don't know whether it is or
I
not.
know it is across the road,
Right, and of course the subdivision, you know.
and the subdivision just past the
I think
50-foot
that's
strip.
the road and the subdivision on this side, it all is.
Over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah,
this lot.
yeah. I know it is up on the corner. The corner is because it was rezoned commercial a while back. And then across the road, I know everything across the road from it
Yes,
is.
they're across the road, I know it is. I'm fine with it, I'll make a motion.
I have a motion by Mayor Falconberry. I have a second by Stacy Booker. Any more discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Moving on to 4C, 2-lot final plat 5309 Nashville Highway for Chandler Gentry.
See if I can make it easy on these other guys. So I gotta wait for Jonathan, I gotta bring some other pieces of paper, but
I think we got this in our,
do you have it in your,
yeah, I think it's in here
Just have a
somewhere.
lot in here.
you have
It's just really tiny in here. I think it is. Is that it? Yeah, that's it right there, right?
that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Got the little circle drive on it.
Gosh, did Alton have any, did he have a chance to review?
I have not seen a review of it, so if he did, he didn't get past it.
Okay.
So.
And he's not here? I don't see him. You're not here on behalf of the city?
Nope.
You look like an engineer.
I am,
I had a few, I guess, comments, not necessarily any objections. I think just some housekeeping items that would need to be done on the plat. And I'm gonna ask if anybody remembers Stacy. I think you were on the board. Todd, you were around. Marion, I don't know if you were or not.
She's been here the whole time.
Okay, maybe you were. Well, we did, you know what? Mayor, you may have, Mayor.
It's okay, hey.
Oh, man.
That's not a bad thing, it can be worse.
We're all kinds, man.
He was mayor at that time.
At that time, he was mayor.
That's where my mind was going. When, next to Sunnyside up here, when Huntley first brought that to us,
Yeah,
and y'all were here.
Yeah.
We passed a rule or regulation to amend the subdivision regulations to require all setbacks along the major thoroughfares in town, which I think is just 31A and 99. I think Depot's not a major thoroughfare. So the two main roads in town, all front setbacks all setbacks along the state road were gonna be increased to plan ahead for future growth
Yeah.
in case the road. And I don't remember what we increased it to. I think we went to 50 because,
it was at 30, wasn't it?
well, no, what
25.
Huntley's deal was, he had where the condos are going flipped sideways, which made that a side setback of lot 52 or whatever, that condo, whatever the
Right,
eight,
four acres
yeah,
piece.
yeah, the 4 acres where the condos or the townhomes are going. So he had it as a side setback and had the setback to the structure like 20 feet off the right of way. I want to say we increased it to be 50 feet from the state road, irregardless of whether it's considered a front, side, or a rear, but I don't remember. I know it's not 40, so Chandler, this would just be a housekeeping item for your surveyor. The front setback needs to be increased or whatever we passed it to be. I don't think we can because Huntley got his in. That's what we discussed it on. He came back with a corrected plat, but he didn't correct it all the way. But he had his plat submitted before we made that rule. So he met us in the middle. I think we asked for 50, he was at 25 and he came back at like 37 and
Yeah.
everybody said, okay, whatever. You know,
Did we decide that was at the end of the side of the road?
No, at the lot line. At the lot line, which is
Okay.
normally 60 foot off the center line on a state road.
That's why
And
that's
so-
the
in
center line of the-
In some places, it's 50 foot off the center line, just 25, depending on the size of the road. But 31A, it doesn't state on here. It says 30, or does it say 38? I don't see on here what the right of way is, but from his actual front lot line,
33,
so it's a 66 foot
Yeah.
right of way. That's a,
because it
Yeah, it
says,
can vary.
yeah, it can be anything, I guess. But I think we would definitely need to increase the front setback to whatever our regulation says, and it's not 40 along a state road. It's
Would you be okay with 50 or?
it's whatever we passed on our rule back
No,
then.
I think it is 50.
I think it's
Have to look
50.
Back at the minutes
Yeah.
and see or the regs, but I'm sure it's 50.
I think it's 50, but
Okay.
we can double check that. And Chandler, I do want to apologize. I know you got caught in this plat with a lot of changes going on, and I know it's been a long, hard process getting this here, but I had a question about that, and then another question I had, and this may not affect Chandler a bit, but it may need to be something that the Bowman needs to decide on, and Jonathan just left, so he was asking the same thing. Because you're dividing your property, and because Lot 1 is serviced by an existing septic system, it's working fine because you live there, right?
Yes.
I guess my question to this board and to the Bowman is, if someone is developing a property or splitting property in the city limits less than 5 acres, is it the town's desire to require them to hook up the city sewer? Like you had to deal with on repair, but
yeah,
it's,
that's what they
and-
require it once it fails.
once it fails, or if you divide property. Some municipalities do require it if you're subdividing property. And that's what I don't know, that we hadn't had to deal with that a lot, so I don't know if we have a rule.
Yeah, I think that actually the regulations basically require, if sewer's available, that, you know, you have a subdivision or a new development, that you have
Have
to
to
connect.
connect.
Now, has that always been, like female, but that was where.
Well, sewer
there
wasn't
wasn't a
available.
line
Sewer
there.
was
It
not available.
You didn't require them to run sewer to it, but if sewer's available, again, I don't know if it's been
Is it for the
enforced
new lot or
uniformly.
is it for?
I think it's not, well,
Well,
these
it
are
could
two
be
new
both,
lots.
yeah.
Because you got one lot now and you're creating two lots. So one's not grandfathered in, from a subdividing standpoint, this is 2 brand new lots, even though one has a house on it. So if that's what the rule says.
That's what the regulations say, and it's been, because I know there's been conversation even with lots that were not being subdivided, that where sewer was
Available, do you require them to hook up or not?
Right.
So my second question to that is, this would not apply to lot number 2, but specifically for lot number 1. If we require the home to be, as part of this approval, if we require the home to be hooked up to city sewer, does the existing home get charged the $5,000 capacity fee as well as the tap fee, or just the tap fee? I know lot 2 would be subject to both because it's nothing's there yet.
Right.
But specific to lot 1, because there's an existing house there with,
If that, well, I can't remember.
I think the $5,000 is specifically for new front doors, like new
Right.
residences. So I'm thinking the $5,000 extra fee would not apply to tract 1, but the sewer fee and the cost of boring
So that's gonna be probably, I don't know, $16,000 to $20,000.
to bore into the road. But you could do 1 bore to service both lots.
True.
Yeah, so that, I mean, the trade-off is, if you weren't dividing this, if you were only subdividing lot 2, you could pass that cost on to whoever buys that lot down the road. But with the house being there, if that's the desire of the city, and even if you're okay with doing that, is there a certain timeline that we would put on the applicant to make that happen? I know a bore is gonna take 60, 90, 120 days to even get somebody lined up to do that.
Yeah, I think it's only, is it one person that's doing that? The board?
There's multiple, but they're costly, and they have to. I think they have to be approved to work, you know, to bore under a state road. There's certain bonds and stuff they have to carry. You can't just go rent a boring machine and do it yourself. And the city can't do it. I think it has to be done by. You can't jet it with air anymore under a state road. County roads you can, but on a state road, and they don't really like you saw cutting the road either. So if you hit a rock, your price doubles to bore to a rock versus. And it may not be that bad if you do a grinder pump and you have a smaller line. It's not going to be as bad as boring for a gravity for a 3 or 4 inch. And that's a force main across the road, so I don't know what that cost would be. But I think you could put a sleeve into. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you could put a sleeve in to catch both of them if the sleeve was large enough. But I guess my question is specific to Chandler's. Is that a requirement that we want to be noted on the plat? And if it is the $5,000 new capacity fee subject to both lots, or just the lot 2 that doesn't have an improvement on it?
I don't know, I didn't know it was a capacity fee, I thought it was just flat 10,000, so I didn't realize it was separate.
Yeah, you got the tap fees, water and sewer.
Right.
It's 6,000, I think. I think water sewer combined is 6,000. And then there's a $5,000 capacity fee to build a new sewer plant. Yeah. So it'd be 11,000 total, or is it?
It's
10?
5,000.
So it's 5,000 for water.
It's 5,000 each.
I thought it was
It's
6.
5,000 each.
Is it really 5,000?
I think it's 5,000.
It's 25 for water, 25 for sewer, and then a $5,000 capacity.
Capacity fee, that's what it is.
Correct, okay.
I'd have to look at the language, but my guess is the capacity fee is gonna apply to both lots,
Because they're creating 2 new lots.
customers,
Okay.
basically.
This is gonna start happening a lot around.
I know, well, and that's why, and, I mean, that's why we
You
gotta
gotta decide.
figure out what we,
The question is, we know for sure it's not in it's not part of the sewer system.
no, it has a septic tank. In fact, the surveyor, I know Amanda and Chandler he had to pay the surveyor to come field locate the line and field locate the tank.
That's why the lot goes, I wanted only 2 acres with the house, but since I had to find where the septic was, I had to run a camera down my septic system, find out where the field was.
So if we require you to hook on, I don't know why you couldn't amend the plat.
With the other 2 lots.
I mean, as long as you meet the setbacks and everything, I think that we could make an approval
Subject to the setback.
Subject to.
allowing you to put the lot line where you want it, because I do know you had to pivot the lot line over to dodge your septic tank. and if the septic tank's gonna be, I mean, you'd have to meet your setbacks off the house and everything. I think that was really my only, the only other question, the well house, you told me before, the water well on the property is not in use. Is it plumbed into the house because they may require like a backflow preventer?
I don't know about that. I do know it's not.
But you're already on a water meter at the house.
Absolutely.
Does the city check on them or not?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They've got to have backflow preventers, meet all cross protection specifications.
And you don't own the property over the fence going to the right, correct?
No, I believe that's Hutchinson.
Okay. Because which is pre-existing, the water well is encroaching, I think, a little too close to the setback, but it's existing, so I wouldn't see any issue with that. And in regards to the sewer, when someone's, especially on a state road where it's going to be a costly board, does there need to be language on the plat regarding it's the customer's responsibility to pay for the bore and the improvements, or is that just assumed when they come in and sign up for the tap?
It's assumed, there's obviously not any harm in putting it on the plat, but it's, so that if anybody were to buy another lot, maybe.
It is assumed, but I don't know if that's the best way to go. I think we need to have it on there somewhere so whoever buys it's gonna realize it.
I mean, it's easy, it's just the surveyor putting it on the plat. So before we make any type of formal action on this plat, do you have any desire to withdraw your request if you have to hook both properties up to sewer? Are you willing to move forward? Because we don't want to approve something with a condition that if you're not satisfied with the condition, you have the right to withdraw.
Yeah, I'm just thinking probably about 25 grand to get me total, probably, or.
So what? He'd have to cross, 2 or 3 properties and get private easements. I don't know that it'll be any cheaper. So I guess, before we make any kind of a motion, we just.
And I want to go through with it, so.
Okay. You do want to go
So
forward?
I will make a motion to approve this plat, subject to, and if we can get all this in writing from Mr. Gentry, subject to correcting the front setback to be 50 foot or whatever that amount was that was approved a few years ago. And putting a plat note that requires both lots to be serviced by city sewer with all applicable capacity fees and tap fees, and allowing Mr. Gentry to move the common lot line between lot 1 and lot 2 to meet his needs now that we don't have to dodge the septic field line. As long as it meets our
If I wanted to
regulations.
keep it, is it either or though? If I decide to keep it at 2 and 3 like it is? If I wanted to.
You can keep it just like it is if you want to, or
You just
could have your surveyor.
If I wanted to move it, if I wanted to.
Yeah, you could move the common lot line as long as, and Stacy or somebody at the town would make sure, as long as it meets all the rules as far as setbacks and all.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second by Stacy. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
Uh,
So we'll get to see the changes before the next vote.
And it's already passed, so we can't go back and undo anything. My only other note I had from looking at the plat before, all new residential subdivisions do have to have a sidewalk installed along the road when the new structure is built. That's not something you have to do right now.
Okay.
And if it meets the grounds for a variance, you're welcome to come back and ask for a variance to get out of that if you have a sidewalk going to nowhere.
More than one, right?
I think we've discussed that
We
before.
discussed that.
Now, this one, I would leave Todd up to making this determination. Lot number 1, there's no new residence that's gonna be built on there, so until someone decides to build something new, I don't know that you would even need a sidewalk on lot 1, because it's an existing house.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
So lot 2, if you simply sold the lot, that would be no impact to you, whoever buys it and builds something on it. And down the road, if you rezoned it to commercial, then anything related to that would be subject to our review for a site plan. So I don't think the sidewalk's nothing that's gonna impact you right now, other than maybe just knowing the plan, or being aware of it if you decide to build a house.
Okay, let's move on to 4D, Chapel Hill Church of Christ parking lot expansion. Jess Dillard, here to speak.
Yep. You got any questions?
Looks very detailed. They're just more or less wanting to asphalt their front yards, like between the church, and you ran all your calculations for stormwater and all that, looks good to you.
Yeah.
And, I mean, their runoff technically goes to property they own behind the church anyway, correct?
Yeah, it goes straight
Into the
to the
creek.
creek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do they own all the way to the creek?
Mhm.
Okay.
They do. I think it's technically listed as 2 tracks, but.
But they own, and not really have any plans to sell in the other one?
No, they don't.
Behind them?
I don't see no issue with it either.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion by Mayor Falconberry. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second. Mr. Zimmerly, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. 4E, Burry Holton subdivision, East Hill Farms Development, rezoning.
That's me.
Oh, that's you too?
Yeah,
Okay.
Joseph's not here, so.
Ah, got you, okay.
This is
So
the one.
this is the same thing we saw the concept plan on.
We did, and we
It's
did
just
the
officially rezoning the property.
Right, and we did the minor plat last month, but the minor plat was approved with conditions of getting TDOT to sign the access way, the access certificate or roadway certificate.
That was just to create the large tract.
Right,
It's gonna be further divided, right?
Yes, because technically this property was like 4 or 5 lots.
Yeah, like-
And so we subdivided off the existing house.
The house.
Yes.
And then combined everything else.
everything else into lot 2.
For the purpose of rezoning and further
Right.
development.
So
Okay.
what we're rezoning tonight is lot 2, and we also never heard anything from TDOT, so hoping to just,
We just need you to remove that so it can be
and
signed.
we did, and I brought 3 copies.
You did?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we just need to sign off on that.
And,
Since I'm involved in that deal, can the mayor sign?
Yeah.
Y'all got me messed up by doing that earlier. Can you sign? Because I don't need to sign that one.
Okay.
Looked at the water this last rain that some of those lots.
I didn't see any standing water from the creek.
Okay.
I didn't
from
see any from the creek, I just
Yeah.
saw standing.
No, there was
water, though.
ponded water, but that's.
Federal water
that's just-
everywhere, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
It's pretty deep. I looked over.
So what is the rezone?
I think is it rezoned to R3?
It is.
So high density residential,
From-
but it's right now probably R1, or is it B, or it's probably both, it's probably B1 on the front. I think the front 300 foot's B1, and then the back is,
I didn't bring a copy of the concept plan.
I think it's 2 zones because the property goes really deep.
It's zoned R1 right now.
Well, I think the back part was R1, but right along the road was possibly B1. Or actually be B2, I think. No,
Are you talking about this subdivision? Or no?
well, his frontage on the road, I think all that.
Not where the
down-
house is, but the other,
Yeah, the little strip going to the old barn, the front 300 foot, I think
right.
had a commercial zone at one time. No?
Everything around it
Okay.
has R1.
Okay, so it's all, so it's just going from R1 to R3.
Correct.
And
That
the,
seems to be the favorite
and the
anymore.
house stays
The house is
R1,
staying as, yeah,
right?
this is strictly for lot 2.
Yeah, I know.
Lot
I'm just
1 will stay as.
clarifying.
And the R3 is what y'all need
Yes,
for your
for that
proposed
conceptual
subdivision.
layout that we presented last month.
That's what everybody's doing.
And the applicant, the stuff we discussed with the sidewalks and the
Yes.
underground and the mail kiosk,
Yep.
all that seems to be
Yeah,
updated then?
that's not a problem.
Okay.
Have we ever added all that to our actual books that people could read and see and do? Has it been added?
I don't think
I know
so.
we've talked about it, but has it
It's
been
one of
added?
the,
It's in,
Yeah, so this is an opportune time to bring up a document that I've never seen, but Amanda, before she was administrator,
She did
was
a-
hired to do a codification of the subdivision regulations and the zoning, which she said she did. she was working from, but it has never come before the planning
I haven't
commission
seen it
in
either.
Roma to be approved. And so that's something that needs.
Is that something Mark was working
administratively-
on with her?
Yeah.
Yes, Mark started it, and we brought her in, talked to her about it.
I
was asked to.
remember an email chain with just some discussion on it, but I don't know that we ever saw
We
a
never
final.
approved.
I don't know if there's, no, we haven't, because again, well, we'll go back to all that, but we've never seen it. I know it's never come before the commission. I don't know if there's a hard copy of it or if it's just a digital copy that she
So
prepared.
we need to
So
request that.
if it makes any
I do
difference,
need to request
the
it.
zoning ordinance that we have to go by says restated 2020.
That would be the one Amanda worked on.
Yeah, but that's it. Huh.
But it's
It's
different.
different, it's
No,
different
we've
from the
changed
one
it.
that's on
We
the
changed it since
website.
then, y'all.
So we changed it since the one on the
I think we
website?
changed it.
What's the
No,
what's the one on the
it's
website?
2020, that's gotta be the right one.
Well-
2020 is when she would have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amanda didn't stay until
The
June.
one on the
but-
website,
Oh, this is.
So the 2020 version is the previous version that Mark was working with, that Amanda.
So do we have a newer one?
No,
the one on the website says last amended 2008.
yeah, that's the one that is official. But again, there were several amendments, and I think the 2020 document was what she had done to put all the amendments.
Put everything
in.
together.
But that codification was never.
Never actually
Right,
adopted or approved.
Right, which we need to,
So we need to look at it before we approve it, I guess.
Yeah.
so we'll put that on the agenda.
Put that on the agenda for
month.
next month.
Okay.
But hopefully all those things will be up to date at
I
least
don't know
through
where we're at the
2020.
sidewalks. We talked about the sidewalks and adding the sidewalk to everything past one home.
Yeah, that's official.
Has that been officially
I
added?
had
Yeah.
asked them.
Yeah, that's official, so. So I just want to make sure the applicant was good
Okay,
with
but I
that.
just want to bring us back in.
Yeah.
Do I have more discussion on
Just read
this
them.
one? For E, or are you ready to make some kind of recommendation?
I make a recommendation that we pass along with a favorable recommendation to the bone. Is that?
I have to abstain from this one.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a set motion by Mr. Zimmerly, a second by Mayor Falconberry. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, motion carries. We're gonna move now to 4F, final subdivision plat for Spring Creek Farms, Phase 2, Section 2. Here we are. You ready?
Oh,
We've had this discussion, haven't we? Final.
a couple times, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I see.
I guess the biggest question, Alton's not here,
Sure.
and apparently,
A month ago when we were here, we were requesting final approval pending bonds.
yes.
And you were
we
agreeable
tabled
with
it.
that.
Yeah, and we tabled it. So are the bonds completely worked out and satisfactory with the city or not?
No.
No.
But so I'm asking the same thing, pending bond. Preliminary approval pending bond,
Or final approval?
final.
And I know we've done that in the past. The one difference I see with this one versus what we've done in the past is this is the final phase of that chunk of dirt out there. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
Of the single family section.
Of the single family section, which the others already, they don't have to be subdivided, I don't think.
No.
Yeah, great. Todd, do you have an opinion on the final last phase of something? Is it, I know we've had a lot of discussion about stuff, just stuff in general,
Well, obviously-
mostly super stuff.
Right.
And we've had a lot of concerns. with
Still do.
citizens.
And
We've had a lot
that's
of
actually
concerns.
why it was tabled, was because there was an open question with regard to
And,
sewer.
and we got that worked out.
Correct.
Thank everybody that was involved in that. Since then, I know there's not all related to the subdivision. There's been a lot of complaints, I think, in the neighborhood to the city about drainage, yard
Drainage.
drainage, water runoff. A good portion of it, I think, is on the builder of the single family lots. Me and the mayor did walk behind some of the homes where people were complaining, and some of it related to phase one. Was stuff that landed on the common area, you know, that would be part of the development, you know, housekeeping before the bond's released. In regards to this last phase being approved, do we need to revisit what we're requiring as far as bond amounts for runoff and drainage and storm drainage and long-term retention, which I guess the HOA, at what point are you out of the HOA? Just
85%, 90% built out, yeah.
so in the near future?
Yes.
Okay. So is that something that we need to decide on before we make a motion to approve something subject to those amounts being set, or, I know we've done that many times in the past.
Yeah, I
We've
think
approved
that's,
it.
obviously, you know, you're not gonna approve it except subject to those bond amounts. And as you said, that's what we have traditionally done, and that's what the ordinance allows for.
And in the past, that's just been worked out administratively between the applicant and you and the city.
The engineer, you know, ultimately determines the bond amount,
Sure.
and then I review the letters of credit. And again, it's the, you know, engineer's job basically to make sure the bond amounts are sufficient to cover
Is
the.
there a time frame after we make the approval that it's due on?
No, I think it's just whenever they work it out, whenever the city says it's okay.
In the past, it was done, at least from my perspective, it was done as a timing thing. Asking for the preliminary approval pending the bond was done because, and this is not gonna happen, but because maybe next week, you know,
Yeah.
we're ready for bonds.
Right.
We get that information to him, but yet we've got to wait a whole other month
To go back
for
to
the
the
next planning
meeting
commission.
again.
So
Yeah.
that's the idea behind it, right? At least, again, from my
Yeah.
perspective. So I can't obtain signatures until
Yeah.
Todd's
Todd's happy.
said that the bond amounts were adequate,
Okay.
and based on Headcoat's analysis.
Right, and I'm not setting the bond amount.
No,
the
no,
engineer is.
he's got to look at that. And he's already said, I mean, he wants the full analysis from my engineer, not just the amounts. He
Yeah.
wants to know how he came up with those amounts.
Yeah.
And then he says yay or nay, tells
And I know those
Todd.
amounts are rapidly changing right now as
Sure.
well.
And if the developer, for whatever reason, didn't agree, then it could come back to you for, you know, a final adjustment of the bond amount. But if,
Right. But I guess, let me just ask a quick question. What's the concern with regard to
I think
the bond amounts?
I think the concern, especially now that we're at this moment, where we're at the final approval of the last phase of your development,
Right.
that chunk of dirt. The concern long-term is something not being done properly, or a future failure after the bonds are released, or if the bonds aren't satisfactory enough to cover, let's say runoff and drainage. Hypothetically, you got an amount in there for $20,000. Well, let's say everything works fine for a year, the bonds get released, which I know on one of them, on the sewer, some are now being extended to 2 years. But let's say the city did release a bond and then there was a major failure of the soil or something that was not stabilized properly, the wrong type of soil used in something, and, you know, a failure happened after the bond was released and the city's.
Which happens.
It happens, yeah, I mean,
Right.
and we've all seen it, and then at some point, I guess this subdivision is Chapel Hill's very first subdivision with an HOA.
It is.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is.
City, yeah.
And there are other areas and other cities in Tennessee that I know of where an HOA was put in place to get smaller lot sizes, and then over time, the HOA just kind of ceases to exist. The water retention area and ditches just all go to pot, saplings grow up in them, and then long-term, the city or municipality that lands in is stuck fixing all this stuff because the HOA has ceased to exist. Just, I don't want to say folded, but just decided to no longer do their job. Yours is a little bit different because y'all have amenities, you know, an HOA without amenities, I think, is a little more challenging. The HOA you said has amenities, so I don't foresee that happening, but you know, there's already been some concerns and issues with the first few approvals that's happened out there, specific to runoff and drainage. So
Definitely runoff and drainage.
I guess from a housekeeping standpoint is just make 110% sure that those bond amounts are in the proper amounts, and then I know we have a lot of new staff going on with the city, and then someone in the city being charged with annually making sure those bonds are renewed, and or if they're not renewed and not released, they would need to be called, or at least a phone call. The phone call put into somebody, or you do a bond or 1 year irrevocable letter of credit, what?
It's, I think we've done it a couple of different ways, but I guess again, from my experience, so let's just say, for example, it's a bond, and I think the bond I've got out there right now is $238,000.
Okay.
Right? Well, my bond is only good for a year, right? It might be longer, but the time.
It's good for a year, but we
the time frame
require
is
you to renew
material. I guess what I'm getting at, yeah. So my bond company's going to call me and say,
You need to renew or release.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then I call you and ask for a reduction in bond
That's right.
to turn it over to a maintenance
A
bond.
maintenance bond, yeah,
Right.
which reduces it, what, 80%, 90%? Depends on
Yeah,
what it
it's
is.
based on, and then that's probably for the second year. And then
Yeah.
after that, I call and I say, okay, I'm ready to
Request,
get off bond.
So this is all subject a little bit in other counties. That final request to release the final bond actually comes to the planning commission. Does this board want to? This is unique because we hadn't dealt with a large subdivision in over 10 years, probably 12 years. For any type of release, especially a final release on a bond, does that request need to come to the plan, or do we want it to come to the planning commission, or be handled internally with city staff and city council? Come to the planning commission. So after we deal with yours, we'll talk about, we can do something on other business with that.
And I will say what we did with River Forest this most recent time was to have the bond is automatically renewable unless it's released. So it'll come back to the planning commission
Okay.
even after this, well,
After a
before the
year.
expiration of the first year. So
And at
just
that
for
time,
review, but presumably, and I mean, it's gonna be, y'all are pretty close. There's not that much infrastructure to be.
well, and
Completed.
an advantage of coming back to this body, I think, is at that time, if the city has adequate staff to do this, you gotta get on the agenda ahead of the meeting. The city sends somebody out to look inside the storm drains, to look at the retention pond, to look at the ditches, to see if there's been any emails to the city about drainage, and if there is, that discussion can come up a year from now when you're trying to get the bond, attempting to get the bond released. And I guess my only other question, and it's simply a question, Todd's informed me it cannot be a requirement. As the developer of that subdivision and knowing that there's an impact on existing infrastructure out there, are you willing to voluntarily assist with converting the gray water pumps into grinder pumps at the existing lift station, and or throw some money in a pot to help improve the county road, which is absolutely awful in shambles, but there's nothing we can do about that because it's not our road. I've called the county. The county's not gonna voluntarily do anything except for throw some gravel in some potholes.
Sure.
Is there anything that you will voluntarily offer?
Well, I mean, does anybody even have any idea what any of those costs are? And then I guess with regard to, for the sewer thing, but with regard to the road, I mean, that,
It's
you
not
guys
gonna
all
benefit,
live
it's not
here.
gonna benefit the city a bit.
No, but that road's been horrible forever.
But it's worse now.
Yeah, no, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying
Horribly worse, yeah.
it's been horrible forever. So at what point does the county do anything with regard to that?
I've talked to Jerry Williams as well.
I've talked to
He
him.
says that he is going to do something when the development
It's
finishes.
completed.
Sure, yeah.
I'll tell you. So
But he
that,
will be up for reelection.
there you go,
Right.
there you go. So
Right.
that's just two questions before we, just questions for you, only questions.
Yeah.
As far as the grinder pump, I talked to Tommy Whaley after the meeting we had a couple of weeks ago. To change the propellers or make those existing pumps work as grinder pumps instead of gray water pumps. He didn't really know, but he did tell me to simply replace one of those pumps. And if it had to be upgraded to be a grinder pump, it would probably run in the $25,000 to $30,000 range.
Sure.
To Chad, do you happen to know by chance, but that's what Tommy just right off his head said, if one of those pumps went out, because we're now accepting black water instead of gray water, and it had to be replaced, Tommy let him believe that it could be $25,000-$30,000 to just replace one of them pumps.
We're looking at
And there's two
replacement
pumps in
costs.
there.
There's two pumps.
We're looking at replacement costs right now, at Morningside lift station, worst case scenario, and right now they're running around 40 to 50.
Each?
Yes, sir.
So 40 to 50,000 if one of those pumps had to be replaced. Now, there's a possibility it could just be upgraded with the, Mr. Hefcock was
Yeah,
very
yes.
knowledgeable in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I'm just, as a developer and knowing now on the back end, we know now that there has been a strain put on the sewer system that may not be felt for some time to come, that at least myself didn't fully know on the front end. Ignorance on my part.
I get,
For not
and
making sure.
guys, listen, I understand, and I think honestly, I've been involved down here since 2017, and I haven't had a chance to meet all of you, but I've certainly, you guys have seen me enough, right? But, and I've at every turn, I've tried to be a good neighbor, but I can't help but think that there's a sense of, I don't know how to characterize it as anti-growth, right? Or a nameless, faceless entity that's descending on your town and changing things, but because that's not the case. It's just me, right? I'm just a guy, right? It's just there's not a big corporation. It's just me. But consider the numbers just between Doug's neighborhood and my neighborhood. That $5,000 capacity fee pays for half of what you have told me your sewer system, upgraded sewer plant is going to cost, right? Your estimate. That's
So we wouldn't
half.
need it without the growth.
No, I get it,
But not needed without the growth.
I understand that, but my point is that's half of. So every one of these meetings that I've attended, it's been, well, what about this or what about this? Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for that? But you've got two developers that, with what we have put on the ground, is paying for half of that cost, just that, and then 390 rooftops, the tax base. That's all agricultural land that you weren't collecting any taxes on.
And an elected official told me this, all the taxes every single one of them residents will ever pay won't even educate their kids. So tax base is not anything they can have.
Well, Marshall County's got, Marshall County at least has got the
it's-
highest tax base around,
But it's
tax rate
still,
around.
property taxes alone don't even educate the kids.
Sure, but it's undeniable, I think, is what I'm getting at. I think it's undeniable the financial impact, the help, the positive financial impact.
I think there's positive.
That 390, well, of course, I mean, more people in the room, we're sucking up more oxygen, but 390 new rooftops in this town, and that's a lot of financial benefit. And and it's not like I or anybody else that I've heard at least has asked for any special favors with regard to anything, right? It's, you want me to do it this way, I'll do it this way, if I'm knowing that I need to pay for this, pay for that. It's the part that, and perhaps I'm reading the room wrong, but it's the part that, well, you're here, we want you to pay for this as well, for no other reason other than the fact that,
Your impact on the system.
sure, but like I said, it's
It's just a
$2
question.
million towards the cost of that plan.
Well, moving forward, Ms. Alton had a lot of good information to share that he's been involved with other municipalities and cities. We know things today that we didn't know 2 years ago, 3 years ago. When was the first phase brought in?
2018.
Huntley was probably 18, so almost 4 years ago now, I'll say. So three, that's my last. Yeah. Was it 2018? So 2018, 3.5 years ago, at that moment in time, everything you told me would make more sense with dollars and cents and numbers than it does today. reverse side of everything you said, I think those 390 rooftops, long-term, without proper planning, would make more of a negative impact to the city of Chapelville than a positive. And part of that's because of the knowledge we now have that we didn't have then. Moving forward,
2018, there's all gonna have pumps.
well, moving forward, Alton was saying we could potentially study an impact a certain development's gonna have on a certain sewer line or water line and make that developer on the front end say, okay, because you're putting this development in, we know it's gonna impact and cause hardship on this lift station, so on the front end, we require you to pay X amount of dollars
Sure.
for the future replacement. This is just a question on the back end.
Yeah, and I was part of one of those conversations when that was recommended. But let me just say too, again, Alton did not recommend that the city put impeller pumps on those things. It was his professional opinion that it was not required.
We'll see in a couple of years.
Yeah, right. I'm just telling you. I mean, you know, that was it's not my engineer. It was your engineer that said that.
But I think when we, to begin with, we had no idea we were
Correct.
going to
We
have
didn't.
Blackwater.
That's correct.
We did not.
No. I'm not disputing that either.
That's
But
correct.
I think what he said that night, and he said it the previous meeting that we had over at the model home, that in his professional opinion, it was not needed. Even now that we've decided that Blackwater needs to be accepted. So
I think there will be a future failure at some point.
I mean, you're our learning curve.
Yeah,
You're
no,
developing-
yeah, right.
you're
So,
our
yeah.
learning curve.
So it's just, I know we gotta pull this back in.
Sure.
It's just a question.
But I
Are
think the
you-
point he made that night, though, Isaac, was that the pump wasn't his concern. It was the infrastructure between there and the sewer plant that you kept raising concerns about. He said, that's
the concern.
where your
And
focus
the
of
lift
attention
station,
needs to be,
yeah.
not
Yeah.
worrying about this pump that he doesn't think.
Which are both an impact created by the rooftops.
Yeah.
But now, let's move back
Yeah.
to what do you want to do?
Well, I wanted to get an answer to a question.
Yes, well, I don't know that you're going to.
Are you
obviously,
voluntarily willing to do anything at all?
Absolutely, but we've got to understand the math, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars, right?
I'm gonna come back and ask about the drainage water that I know there's some things out there.
Which we can address that if releasing the bonds have to come back before this board. And
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Isaac.
Oh, you're fine.
And I'd love to talk with you some other time about what you're talking
Yeah, we
about.
can.
But that's bonded differently from phase two, so
It is.
it's not, they're not tied together, so.
But we can do our due diligence on the new bonds and make sure they're
That don't matter.
very adequate to cover
Yes,
any
absolutely.
future concerns.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, and again, sorry, let me just say, the bond amounts are determined by the engineer, right? So,
But the bond can be higher if the engineer knows of failures that we've had in phase one, in the first couple of phases too.
But it's our engineer that determines those amounts.
It's our
right?
engineer that approves his engineers.
Yes.
That's
His
correct.
engineer puts
So
together
as
the
long
math.
as our guy actually does his job and checks it, then.
We should.
And then I
Correct.
think you're allowed to go 10% higher, is that right, Todd? I think there's a certain margin,
It may be 120%.
120% of what,
cost.
so if they think the cost is 100,000, we can require $120,000 bond.
Right.
And right now, that's tricky too, because the county actually just raised their water tax because their real cost of stuff going in the ground
Yeah.
per Tommy is 30-40% higher than it was a year ago. Are y'all seeing impacts on like putting numbers together for developers?
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, so,
Hard cost.
so if you look at what we bonded per linear foot a year ago,
It's the
that
same
same bond
today.
today is gonna be 30% higher or 40% higher.
Right.
Well, yeah.
And so just to bring it back, and just a quick reminder, we've got our subdivision regulations. You got a plat before us. If you're gonna deny the plat for any reason, you've got to cite in the record what the failure of the plans are to meet the subdivision regulations.
And then he'll come back with those addressed.
So that's what the planning commission is doing on plat review, either the preliminary phase or the final phase. And the bond amounts are gonna be what the engineer determines are appropriate.
So basically what you think we should do, since all we had left was the bond
again, if you
or fill it as an incomplete submittal because the bonds aren't here. I think either action would be appropriate. Now, in the past, we have passed stuff subject to bonds being set later, but the bonds not being set and stamped and approved on. If this same thing went to the county, it would be failed.
I mean,
It would be failed.
the
if they
other
weren't
thing
stamped with
moving
amounts
forward too,
stamped.
if the town wants to require developers to complete infrastructure and just not accept bonds, you know, you can do that. It's gonna change the development dynamic, but it's an option. You don't have to accept bonds if you.
Which are some places that
But
simply require, in this case, that the bonds at least be worked out and approved and already have everybody satisfied on them before it comes to the planning commission.
Well, I need some kind of a motion. I mean, whatever you want to do, I mean, that's what you could either do one of those two things that you said. Or give it to table.
I'd make a motion to deny the plat as an incomplete submittal because the bonds are
Not set.
already worked out.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any discussion?
just a question, do we know why the bond amounts haven't, is it because we're waiting, our engineer's waiting on the,
Does your engineer, has he submitted this stuff to our engineer, is anything out for review, or just
here.
nobody's come up with amounts?
No, I haven't asked him to yet.
Okay.
So it'd be-
Again, it was, the whole reason I did this before was a timing issue. It doesn't, it's just so, hey, when I've got the bonds ready.
I don't want to hold him up no longer either, so is that something we can get him involved in, we have on by our next meeting and get it solved? Or is that too
That's
soon?
what we've
too
done in
quick?
the past.
I think we've done that in the past.
We have in the
and,
past.
We certainly have. This is a unique situation.
We should be able to get a hold of him and he can get a hold of y'all engineers and they should be able to come up with something before our next meeting.
I don't think so.
And that's what I would like to see happen if there's a way to get that done.
And all that's got to happen is resubmit.
And do you, at this stage, do you want to withdraw it and so it can be, not have to resubmit to have it addressed at the next meeting with bond amounts
With the bond
completed?
amounts.
Good. Yeah, I guess I'm not familiar enough with the process. What if it's
So if we
If
deny it,
it's
you have to
denied,
start
you have to
from
resubmit and pay, review fees again for the final plat. If it's withdrawn, it can just be put on the agenda, hopefully with bonds agreed upon at the next meeting.
And then
I don't think you have to repay the $300 per lot. though.
You don't think?
I think it's
per lot? No.
I think you'd have to pay a $300 submittal fee to cover, but I think you'd have to pay the submittal fee, but not the added $300 per lot.
But you get back with that, you potentially, it's a new submittal, so I mean, it could end up pushing it back another, if for some reason there was an issue.
I mean, if I guess I'm not understanding, why are we doing it different this time than we have in the past? If we have the last day over, I know it's because we don't have the dollar amounts, but we never have in the past either.
Well,
And so what I'm
and-
gathering for what you're saying is because it's the last one, there's
Yes.
more concern
Oh.
because it's the last one, but we still have the last day, right?
But openly, no.
No?
Once we pass this, it's done.
No, it's contingent on our engineer reviewing those amounts, no?
Yes.
It is. It's
So then
contingent
how's
on
But it
it
this.
doesn't
not
come
done?
back to the planning commission.
Well, why would it need to if he's the last one to have that say anyway?
Because it's the last phase, and I think the concern now, at all prior,
it's the amount.
all prior meetings specific to that subdivision, concerns were raised about multiple things, and the can was kicked down the road. We'll catch that and tidy that up before the final.
I agree.
Before the last phase, before this, before that. There is nothing after this at all.
What, yeah. I mean, guys, you're gonna make your decision, but I really wish you would make it fully informed and with the right information. Are you talking about items in Spring Creek Farms that were neglected and kicked down the road? But one bond doesn't have any effect on the other. And your final say is
I understand
releasing
that.
the bond, period.
In the past, I think we've been very.
What you do tonight, right, it helps me administratively,
In
or
the past.
hinders me, but what releases the city, or what releases me from the city is simply The bond, that's it, the bond.
In the past, we've been very lax, knowing that there was future stuff coming up where we could tidy stuff up. I know in other areas that I've worked, when stuff didn't get done, they just quit accepting,
But you have a $238,000 bond,
which has nothing to do with this plat.
right? That's my whole point.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with it. But you're holding me up because you're concerned, you're holding me up on this final phase
I'm not holding
because.
you up because the final phase, the submittal's incomplete. If you hadn't even.
But
I mean,
I didn't say it, you guys said it. You said
prior
that
phases.
because you're worried about not having the final say.
On phase one, I know the amounts were set and they were being reviewed when you came to final approval.
Well, and I guess, and again,
And now here we are
you
at the
don't
last
have to take
phase.
my word for it, but that's a $238,000 bond, so, and you don't have to take my word for it, but I can tell you, one of the reasons why I don't have the bond yet set for this phase is because if I did the bond now, right, before binder is put down, that's the first layer of pavement and all that, then that bond amount would include work that would have to be completed before I could come to you and get signatures for final plat.
So you don't have binder down.
I don't,
And you're asking for final approval.
like we did
Yeah.
before,
But it was
like
in
River
works.
Forest.
It was in the works, yeah.
Right, so it's in the interest of me and Doug or whomever to present a bond amount to you that is equal to, once everything's completed, right? So that's why I didn't bother doing it. So otherwise, the amount would be
The amount's
greater.
gonna change tomorrow.
It would be greater, correct.
So go-
Needlessly so, right? It would be greater. So the bond, the $238,000 bond that I already have out there is much greater than what it would have been had I waited. Now, again, you don't have to take my word for that. You can have the engineer take a look at it. But that's what I'm trying to avoid now is to have a higher bond amount than I need, right? So I wanted to get preliminary approval, wait until,
Is this final approval or preliminary approval?
well, final plat
This is
approval.
final
This is the
plat
final
approval.
plat. Once we say
Conditional.
yes, it's it, it's done.
That's
And
right.
it sounds like it's premature. If you're
But
trying
it-
to hurry up and get work done to reduce your bond amount.
But, well,
Is that what you're saying?
Isaac, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. It's not premature. It's the same thing that we've tried to do in the past, or Doug's
The
done
other
in the
phase, the
past.
binder was down and,
Yeah.
I mean,
Binder was down before you signed, not before I issued bond.
it was, no, I drove through when the final plat was submitted and binder was being worked on. I mean, cars were in.
This is-
You're absolutely right, like, about that.
I have a motion on the table.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second.
Got a second. You ready to vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Aye. Motion carries.
So I think you just come back, get your plans worked out. My recommendation is to be very thorough, make sure we're covering everything. Drainage is more of a concern
Yep,
now
yep.
than it was on the first phase, on the first parts of the development, because now there's people living there and the town has been getting repetitious phone calls from.
And respectfully, you're
That's the
making a
process.
decision to deny my approval tonight based on that.
No,
No.
no.
That's exactly.
It's
I've got to move this
incomplete.
back.
Okay.
All right, discussion of rates and fees for presenting to planning commission and miscellaneous fees. Okay?
Is that on the last page here?
You asked me.
Okay.
Fine.
So, let's see what we got here.
And I pulled the example and.
And
Part 5,
Yeah.
on the fees.
This is the last page, and I saw it in here somewhere else. So I asked Carolyn to put this on the agenda.
It's about 5 or 6 when you
I asked Carolyn to put this on the agenda because there's been brought to my attention more than one occasion with turnover in city staff, where stuff was not charged correctly or stuff slipped through without being paid for at all. I think some of that's been caught and rectified, so I think moving forward, and I know this is your first time here in 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
I think moving forward, it's very critical so the town don't lose out on funds that we need for future infrastructure, repairs, sewer plant, and just overall impact of rooftops coming into the town. That we make 100% sure we collect on submittal fees and when people come in to build their house, the proper amounts of money. And like the county's done recently, see if there's any need to revisit tap fees or discuss, like Alta brought up a month ago, a case-by-case proposal for each development to look at not necessarily the impact that subdivision or development is having on that chunk of earth, but what's happening downstream, on water, sewer, drainage, other impacts it's going to have in the city, and require future developments to possibly co-op and off-site impacts that development's going to have in the city. And Carolyn, I know a couple of them that we called that Dale was in here. I think everything recently is proper and in order, so this isn't really picking on.
A problem was, you all know what you're talking about. The person that is ringing up there when they come in to pay doesn't know what that
Don't know what
meant.
they're-
So that we need to know, or the person
Itemized list.
needs to know exactly.
Maybe a cheat sheet behind the
what,
counter.
and what you're doing.
Train
When you say
whoever's
final
doing it.
plat, we don't know, is that final plat, or is that what, you know, we just, they real.
Let me interject here. I know Chad, Jim, and I have been talking about some of these fees and going back. What I'd like to do is have ready, perhaps by the next meeting, a new proposed.
Okay.
Here's what our schedule
Fee
is.
schedules. Okay.
And then we can be able to put something like that in the hands of the customers when they come in. And then also, if we're repairing stuff that's been damaged or something like that, we'll know, exactly what to expect on that. That has been an area where we've lost revenue, and we're shoring that up pretty quickly.
Once we do that, can we post it on the website too?
Yeah.
Because it's helpful for
It
where
is,
people
yeah,
can
it
find
is.
it.
And Chad, this is a question I have related to, I think our fees, preliminary plat fees, final plat fees, all that pretty much pays for itself. I mean, when he has to pay $300 for submittal plus $300 a lot, that's more than enough money to pay the engineers and Todd and everybody involved to look over plats. Specific to water taps and sewer taps, if we're not talking about a brand new subdivision and there's an existing, we'll pick on Chandler. Chandler calls up tomorrow and needs a water tap and a sewer tap. With the labor cost and the cost of all pipes and materials and everything going up, is the $5,000 enough? I know the county recently raised theirs, and when I asked why, they said their real cost to put taps in is no longer adequate. It was a year and a half ago, but today it wasn't adequate to cover. They went from 30, the water tap went from 3,150 to 5,650 just for water. And their reasoning was that's what it's costing.
Yes.
Is $2,500 for water and $2,500 for sewer. Seems a little short to me with what people are doing around us. Not by much, but is that something you think we need to revisit or not?
Well, the cost of inflation, how hard it is to get stuff in, and it rises every day. I would say it's worth taking a deep dive into.
Okay.
And trying to get all the information, let Mr.
But
Bill and
at another meeting.
When
yes,
did we
I mean,
raise-
that's,
I think we went from
10.
no, it was 4,000 to 5,000. Years ago, it was 1,000 for water, 1,000 for sewer.
Yeah.
Actually, it was 750. No, I'm sorry. It was 750 and 750, like back in the late 90s. And then it went to, I think, 3,000, which was 1,500, 1,500. And then it jumped from 3,000 to, I was thinking it was 6,000, 3 and 3, but apparently it's 5,000, 2,500, 2,500. And I think it's been that way probably since 2016, maybe. I mean, it's while you were here before, I
think
Then it was 5,000 then, right?
Right. And
So
we
we-
changed it right there.
So we haven't had an increase in at least 5 or 6 years, and I think we've certainly seen inflation in the past 5 or 6 years. So I think it's something the city should look at, maybe simultaneously with looking at review fees and all that.
So, just for clarification, and for me to understand, we'll work on the schedule, bring it forward to Plan Commission, and Plan Commission then refers it to the bottom, right? Is that?
That's correct. I think so.
All right.
That's exactly right.
So we're gonna push this, kick the can down the road.
Till next month. We'll
Next
get-
month.
We'll get it knocked out.
Okay, next.
Or you could have a special call meeting.
Oh, we could, yeah.
Alright, anything else discussion?
Not on that. no.
Now, now we're going down to other business. Stacy, I have something after Stacy. Stacy Booker discussion for Hugo Lopez to add patio area at Amigo.
You didn't have to put me on there, but.
There you go.
He's wanting to add, and I printed a review for him, so you could kind of see, and it's not drawn on the rest of them, but he's just wanting to do like a patio area outside the building with concrete and like rails around it, am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
No, with no roof.
No roof,
No, no,
so
So-
nothing that would require a building permit,
So
really.
it's already an impervious surface, so there should not be a need
Shouldn't
for
be any
any.
impact on water runoff.
Yeah.
Is
I
it
just
in the
told him
parking
it
lot?
would be, it is.
It's in the
parking
parking
lot
lot.
now.
You're gonna, as long as there's still adequate parking spaces, I don't know that when it.
How many parking spaces are you taking up? 3 parking spaces?
Yes, sir. But I have, if you look at the layout,
I was gonna say, you're gonna put some concrete barriers.
well, I'm gonna put stone around some things, but if you look,
Somebody's gonna hit it. Coming out that car.
well, Subway has been hit 3 times and there's no Subway, so.
I think it'd be great, nice.
All that area, which is, you know, right now it's useless. And Jason
Jason Jones.
owns that. We're
Okay.
gonna add those parking lot right there. You know.
Okay.
You know, those 3 to make it.
So you're gonna add 3, you're taking away 3 and adding 3.
Add, yes, sir.
So I guess I don't think this is anything this
Well,
board
this
has
is
to.
part of I'm expanding Amigos. And
Okay.
basically, I'm adding,
Into existing space.
yes, sir.
Okay.
And it's gonna be part of the outdoor area where it has a garage, a clear garage door.
How much further is it gonna stand out from the parking lot?
No, it's just what
Is it
is,
gonna stop at the end of the parking lot?
yes, sir, the parking spot. Yeah, right there. So I don't wanna,
Stand way out.
no, sir. I wanna make sure that way.
So I'm not a
So I don't
hundred
think
percent
this-
sure that you would have to have a site plan for this type of, but because of the impact on traffic flow and because you're gonna have, people dining out in a parking lot, if you want to require.
Just an
certain
engineer review or
things-
something?
Well, I don't know if you even need an engineer review, but maybe a plan that shows, okay, here's where the traffic, here's where the new parking spaces are gonna go, here's how the dining area is gonna be blocked off from
Okay.
the vehicular traffic.
Yeah.
Now's the time to do it, or this is.
Would that be done
Or
by
to
a
do it.
surveyor, engineer, architect, or all of the
I don't know
above?
that you'd have to have any of the above, but I
Okay.
think you'd want to
What
have
do we have there now?
a
besides
document.
Subway?
Subway preschool, or I'm sorry, daycare?
On the other side of
A
it.
counseling is
I
there?
own the whole building.
Yeah. What kind of a shop?
Oh, yeah.
Barber shop, Jed's moving there.
Yep. Barber shop.
So
So
you,
basically, he could just hand sketch something out. Is that
Yeah, I
what
think
you're
it could be
suggesting?
sketched out, and again, then you could look at it and say, okay, well, show
It
us what
makes
kind
sense.
of block areas you're gonna have to screen the patrons from the traffic and where the new parking spaces are gonna be and how traffic's gonna flow, but I don't think it
I'm not,
requires an
I'm
engineer.
actually not interfering with traffic.
Right, but,
You know,
but
I'm
it's,
stopping
but it's
right-
gonna,
Right where they
because
were.
of the parking
Well,
spaces
if
and
we
the new
can look
parking spaces.
at other restaurants here in town, that is, this is, I guess, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if you drive around, There's actually, there are in the parking lot.
Yeah, there is another one.
Yeah. So, you know, it's nothing, you know, I'm willing to do whatever.
Yeah, again,
You asked
I don't
me.
think it has to be anything engineered, but I think it'd be a good idea for the planning commission to look at a plan and provide for the safety.
When were you planning to do this work?
Tomorrow.
Give me their phone number.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's basically a concrete pad.
I mean, before next month.
Yes, sir. I mean, you know, I'm asking for a concrete pad.
And then just, you'd have,
I would have railing, you know.
yeah, railing and stuff like that.
I would have,
I know exactly what he's going to do. I mean,
Is it similar to Don Pepe's over in Columbia?
this is what I'm actually, you know,
I think it's kind of what I saw at Highway 55, right?
this is exactly what I'm gonna do. The concrete pad, railing, and the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that looks good.
I mean, I wanna make, I'm about to do a facelift on the whole shopping
Right,
center.
right,
So I
that's
wanna
what-
make sure it doesn't look odd.
Right.
Yeah, again, the way our regs are worded, I don't know that this
I don't know that it
technically
is gonna
requires it,
require
because it's
anything.
not an addition unless it were to
That's what I was thinking.
defeat the parking requirements.
And you are substituting new parking
Yes, sir.
spaces for the ones that are.
Oh, yes, I need it. You can drop by Tuesday night, Thursday night. They're packing. I need
Thursday night.
Thursday night. People party, back to back.
I'll make a motion.
Or do you want to make a motion or just
We don't
informally?
have to.
We don't
informally
have
say-
to, and put these in.
All right.
I think informally, yeah.
I think,
Informally.
yeah.
I don't think, because you're offsetting the spaces you're impacting with new spaces, I think you're good. Now, in the future, I think that's something that if we want to see more detail, we just need to let people know. Yeah.
Alright, we'll move on to discussion regarding Turner Development Dollar General Store. Anyone here to speak to that?
Turner?
To doing what to?
We didn't make it all the packets.
Oh, here it is.
Updated.
No one here to discuss?
What is the
And-
problem?
Yeah. I've met with some developers here on,
Are we getting a $3 general?
we are.
Oh my
Here we're
God.
getting a fourth.
No, we're not. Are we for real?
I hope they do better at controlling their eyeballs safety wise.
Well,
Wait, are you?
I'm serious, guys.
Are you kidding, right?
No.
Is it going to be a Dollar General Market?
It's, that I don't know as of yet. We're still talking, but it's gonna be a little bit, I think that it's gonna be like 2,000 some odd square feet. So
Okay.
it's a little bit bigger.
Okay, bring to the
Yeah.
sides.
I think the whole Walmart building was right at two.
Yeah, and I've got
Okay, so
some,
that
A little
might
bit
be-
bigger.
That's gonna be a big, that's big.
The other ones are what, maybe 6 or 7?
We're gonna have
give me just a
groceries.
second, I'll grab
Are
the
they
plans real
going
quick.
to, the question is, are they going?
Where are they?
Oh, y'all gonna love that too.
You can start digging tomorrow.
Across from the funeral.
But, yeah, but the question is, are they
don't know.
gonna keep the other two open?
You got
It's not
one.
late. It's not late. They probably would.
And they're gonna fancy it over outside of
This one caught me off guard.
Me too.
I'm like, as bad as I can.
All right, this is the proposal.
Okay.
Dollar General, and he's also going to have a 3,600.
A lease out parcel.
Yeah. Bottom line, this is going in Ezel Street. across from-
Okay.
Easy Street.
Well, it's no longer Ezel Street,
No.
it's still Taylor
Taylor
Street.
Street. Yeah, Taylor Street.
So we're looking at,
So is this 31A?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be offset a little bit.
2,640 square feet.
So,
How many square feet?
10,640.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's bigger than the ones we got now.
It's about the size of the.
We talked about the detention base, of course, this is all preliminary, we wanted to get it on and talk to you guys, and if,
But that's all he's gonna have there, is he planning on doing something later with that much footage?
That's all it shows.
He's
got an out
basically
parcel.
buying this lot, and then he's basically going to rent this one, or at least this one out.
Yeah, it was already 2 lots.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's kind of the,
so this is just a discussion.
This is just
on
a
it.
that's a discussion. I wanted to bring you guys up to speed on that.
Is the current zoning proper? I mean, B2, I guess.
Yeah, that's something that.
It had to be commercial zone.
Yeah, I think it already
Everything
is.
is. 'cause
Everything
I-
from our side.
It may be B3 right there.
Yeah,
All right, as long as we make sure it's brick.
well, that was the
think it
question I
has to be.
wanted to bring forward planning commission, because at this point, he said they're very negotiable, that's what we want. And he said,
And how many houses? and
you want
everything
that,
around?
or you can do more of a plain one, there's one over in Santa Fe, he wanted to go look at it, he said it's
Just the Dollar General.
it's more of a rustic
Going next to
type
it.
look, so.
No,
I
this
wish
is
it was sort of look
another.
something like what's already in town.
houses.
Well, that's what he said, you know.
He's probably saying that because the doctor
I don't think
Harris's
so.
office is kind of rustic.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I needed to put a fence and blockade.
What's that?
I think they're showing,
No houses around that area?
is there any residential use
Residential.
homes?
Maybe in the back.
Maybe in the back, but they'd be behind their retention line. This is all businesses. Over here, yeah, that's a commercial zone property being used as a residence right now,
Okay.
old home.
So,
Which is site plan review time if we want a landscape buffer or a berm or something.
I'm like you guys, I kind of was wondering about the
But I think
business model, but they've been successful with it. I thought they were big.
Some tells me they're gonna have more in there just
I'm
Dollar General
thinking
stuff. They're gonna have a grocery
ticket
store.
go with brick, because this ones in town are brick combined, there's 2
We can do
houses.
that.
And the old Dr. Harris's was basically something that's, those
Fit in,
logs had
it fit
been
in,
there
yeah.
oh, it's cute.
You're right.
from the time the town was here.
I guess also one question I had was, and I'll have to forgive us, because I'm trying to remember what our sign ordinance was on that. Was it, did we require
It's a
monument
certain-
sign?
Yes, they are,
Yeah,
unless-
no internally lit
Right.
neon signs and not on big poles, gotta be monument style,
Okay.
externally lit, is that?
That's
I
correct.
know we went back and forth on
I
that.
do.
Well, that's what we were talking about. I asked them to look at monument signs with gooseneck line. That worked.
Yep.
And there's a certain square foot, I'm
Who's
sorry,
doing that?
there's a certain square footage.
Of signage
sign, and
per
I
size
need
of the
that
building.
for my building too, because I want to add.
It was a
some
ratio,
color.
I think, that's for however many square foot or size the building is, you're limited to so many
X amount.
square inches per square foot of the building or something.
Gotta be a certain size.
Yeah, it does.
Or it can't exceed a certain size, they
and-
don't want big, huge.
Not to stir the pot, but are we gonna go back, are we gonna start going back and doing it where they look at all of this? Like we had started doing before we get to it? So
I
that-
think we have to approve a site plan before they're allowed to get their building permit, correct?
Well, no,
I mean, it's already got its own.
Maybe I'm asking the wrong question. Do you know like how like when they submit something for approval and it had gotten to where it was going through a process and they were having a meeting to fix things before it got to us for final approval?
I think it can be sent to the engineer head or
we
somebody for
gonna-
review.
Were you talking about like the pre-planning,
Yeah, the
pre-planning
shortcut.
commission? Yeah.
That's up to
Again, we
me.
can certainly, yeah.
If there's
Have the
somebody.
town planner to do it.
Yeah, that's, right now that would be challenging to
Yeah.
So,
Do we have a number of spaces, parking spaces?
yeah, I think there's a calculation.
You have to have
that-
an entrance some way
And
out.
their engineer would go
Okay,
on that.
I think he's well covered in spaces.
What street is it next to? What's the main road next to?
This is 31, Lawrence Brothers is right there, correct?
Yeah.
It's
Lawrence
right
Brothers?
directly across from Lawrence Brothers.
It's where Critters used to be.
It was the other hotel in town, right, at one time?
Yeah.
Year long.
That was a stagecoach.
Yeah, I know.
Before my time.
You know, Lawrence Brothers, if you walked out their front door and went straight across the street, Lawrence is still,
It's got like a shed.
monument, right? It's that
Is this
property.
B2 or?
They're gonna do away with that.
They're gonna do away with that. We're gonna do another
I
dollar
think
store.
it's
Right across the street from me.
We need to.
Close. Close.
And the reason I say that is because mine
You
was.
can walk, you can get your walk and get your milk and bread.
Is it behind the Lawrence Funeral?
No, on the other side of the highway.
But they have
So
something
the other
that
side
they're
of
selling
the highway.
monuments.
That's true.
Where they keep the stuff, stock at?
That's it.
or they're storing their monuments, people go,
To the left of
so
the
I'm
apartment,
sure.
yeah, so
And
if
it
you walk out the back door of the
Critters was
apartments,
that.
it'd be-
All right, I need to bring you back
Yep.
in for one other thing to
Yes.
discuss.
So do we don't need to take any action. That's right.
Just communications to the plane, be expecting this, but I've
Okay.
gotta get back to
They're
the,
gonna have to have a lot of people going in and out there on that main road. That's a busy little
well,
street.
the deliveries would be after hours. Okay, so, I mean, it'd be kinda like Ace Hardware, I guess. So we got that, you know, he got all that involved with the entrance. Yeah, I mean, they got to calculate out to get how many per
No trucks parking there overnight.
Yeah,
Somebody asked me the other day about, something that's going on down the old quarry off of, Kingsbury Road. You know anything about it?
I do. I had a phone call today from T-Dec. They said somebody had called them about recent activity out there. It is a stone company in Linden, Tennessee, harvesting surface stone. They're not quarrying, they're not mining, they're not blasting, they're harvesting, more or less, picking up rocks and hauling them 2 hours away and slicing them, breaking them and slicing them into these faux, or not the faux, but the real lick and stick stones that you glue to the wall on the front face of the house or over your fireplace.
How are they managing to pick up?
All that huge equipment.
Well, I know, I mean, but how much of it's out there? That's the question.
So
without
that's a fine line, because the guy that called me with T-Dec today, point blank asked me, he said, "You live in Chapel Hill?" I said, "Yes." I have to interact with them guys a lot. So he said, "You live in Chapel Hill?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, tell me what's going on. It's such and such a site." And I told him. He said, "Is it an open quarry?" I said, "No, it's not. It used to be years ago. In fact, Finley was going to rezone it. Gary
Right.
Finley was going to rezone it to be a quarry." So it's my opinion, a gray area, because they're not quarrying, they're not mining, they're harvesting. If somebody wanted to come buy a rock out of your yard, you could sell them a rock out of your yard, I guess, or you could dig it
Well,
up. and
they
go-
sure have made some big things where you can't see, and they've used a lot of rock in that. So how much rock
So-
is there gonna be left
So,
to harvest?
I think the rock goes all the way to China.
Well, then they are,
Well, they're not mining, they're not quarrying.
They're just digging. They're
So-
just digging.
They're digging rocks, loading them in trucks, and hauling them somewhere else and making them into
I
stones.
would imagine that equipment out there, there's not that much rock out there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a whole lot.
Well, there's already a hole in the ground. I think they're just expanding out from it. Now, here's a question for the city. Here's a question for the city, because it's, why you laughing at Joe? It's
They
been,
aren't cutting it off, are they?
it's been happening for a while,
We're
and
gonna try.
recently, I guess in the past few days, they've gone from an occasional guy in a loader loading up a truck to multiple bulldozers, multiple trackhoes, a lot of stuff going on out there right now. So apparently they're ramping up their operation, and if something is being harvested out of the city limits of Chapel Hill and then being taken somewhere else and sold, someone else is reaping the benefit of the sales tax on it. How does that work if something is being harvested? Feel weird using that term. If something is being removed from Chapel Hill and then taken somewhere else, and then that county is reaping the benefit of the sales tax being collected on it,
You're asking me, I'm not sure, but I think it probably depends on how the transaction is set up. If somebody's buying it here,
No, it's his.
so yeah, so.
The owner of the
selling
company
it on-site
owns that property in his personal name, and then his business.
after he.
Harvest.
I think
Well,
that's.
that's
what
no different than the guy on
It's
Powell
not-
Lane,
it's not
Powell
like
Lane that
it's
does
mining.
dirt, right?
I mean, there's a mining tax.
Really not.
But if the county called them, they'd make them get a business license, and they would collect. They make them do the same thing JoJo's had to do.
Yeah.
They would make it. I mean, at a minimum, have a business license, the county would, if they fill their form out correctly at the end of the year, the county would at least get compensated for something. Right now, the city's not getting anything out of it. But up until now, it's been a very random and small operation. But when I got a phone call, well, TDEC's concern was somebody operating a full-blown rock quarry without a permit for a rock quarry. And then the EPA has a whole list of things for air quality. If you're blasting and sawing and stuff like that, there's certain air quality things you have to do with collecting your dust. That's, to the best of my knowledge, they're not sawing or manufacturing out there. I don't think that's happening, but with the amount of equipment I saw out there today when I passed by, that could be coming in the very near future, because there was a lot of stuff going on out there. I didn't pull up in the driveway because I wasn't welcome.
It has
I wasn't welcome.
sign.
They had a big rock. They had a big rock and a dump truck blocking the driveway.
Yeah. And the sign
says, "Don't
and a
walk in
sign
here like
that says it's posted.
Yeah, it says don't come in.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty much.
something's going on that's gone from a very small operation, kind of flying under the radar.
radar.
Well, they've been flying under the radar, but they're not under the radar
Just
anymore
after
because they're making a lot of noise. The guy at TDEC did tell me that it was his belief it was an adjoining property owner, which is a taxpaying citizen of Chapel Hill. An adjoining property owner called the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation and said, "Hey, what's going on out there? They're mining, they're quarrying, and there's no permit." TDEC looked it up, there's no open permit for it. After my discussion with TDEC, I don't know that TDEC's going to get involved because what they're doing is not a quarry, it is not a mine, and it may not involve any type of TDEC permit.
Does that mean we can't get
Here's the
involved?
thing.
That I don't know.
Here's the thing though, there was a blast out there, so there might
There
be
was?
some big, not this time, but in the past, there was an illegal
Well,
blast.
they have
out
a
there.
rock drill out there, but I've never seen it move. It sits at the. They did carry a drill where you drill a hole. and
But there was an
blast the
illegal
charge.
blast at one time out there. I know
Maybe they
that,
blasted enough to harvest a
I was
bunch of
gonna say
rocks.
they're harvesting that.
but that goes back.
So you actually got a phone call on it as well?
I got hit at the
Okay.
Country Diner.
Well, I had a phone call today. I had a phone call today from TDEC in Columbia.
If that's something we can look into, though, Todd, and go ahead.
What does our ordinance say? That property was previously a rock quarry, like years ago.
So is it
But
grandfathered
Gary
in?
Finley tried to get it rezoned to be a rock quarry again, he got shot down.
Yeah,
All I remember
He
is
never could
Mike
get it
Hatton
approved.
was saying that we got it in the city limits so that there would not be any.
Correct.
Right, and I think at the time they were trying to argue that it was a pre-existing
Pre-existing.
non.
But it wasn't. It hadn't been in
But
operation in 50
right,
years,
and
yeah.
When the
But they
rezoning.
blasted out there so much that they must have hit a rock because it knocked me out of my chair almost. I'm
Out there?
serious. Yes, it went right through Chapel Hill, and it
So-
went out to Rhonda's. I'm serious.
You've
I was
been
on the
drinking that
phone with
morning.
her.
There's his restaurant right here.
That was before we had liquor.
So I honestly don't know if what they're doing, my only thought was if they're operating a commercial business, if they had a retail center where you were going out there and buying your stones, I think it would have to be rezoned to be commercial. If they're
Picking up water.
harvesting rocks, that's no different than,
Yeah, and it depends on exactly what they're doing. I mean,
It's the size that they
I mean,
are.
their end product is sold for profit. You can go out there to their little lot and buy stones to glue over top of your fireplace or to put on
I mean,
a gable on a house.
That's a business, ain't it?
It's on Smiley Road. There's
It's no
the-
different than what
well,
Ronnie
there-
Dalton does.
Well, that, and there's the lady on Smiley Road that plants flowers, and you stop and buy flowers.
Mm.
It's the
Which
same.
that's ag. That's the flowers technically fall under agriculture. They do. I got a
Okay.
friend that does it in Christiana, and she got a visit from zoning, and zoning left her alone because she's agriculture with flowers.
But this isn't agriculture.
I don't see how it could be because
It
they're,
I don't think it is.
I don't think they're making a
So
lagoon
it have
for
to be
a.
zoomed.
It's not making me a swimming pool.
I don't know.
I honestly don't know. It's odd you brought that up because when T-Net called me and then he backed off and said, well, there's nothing He said, I don't think they're violating any T-Deck rules, but they
There's
may.
been several posts on Facebook in the last 3 months about big booms and stuff, but there's a lot of people around here that have tannerite that play.
Yeah.
What about the equipment,
So-
the heavy equipment now gonna be going on the roads more, coming through our area more?
Well, they cut down Candy Springs Road to 99. So right now, they're not impacting, they're trying to hide, they're trying
Yeah,
to
they're
find a
probably
way.
going
Well,
on
that probably-
James King
that-
Road.
They are, they're going straight up Candy Springs, turn left.
With
on
that,
Candy
with that
Springs.
being posted, can we do a physical check on it, Todd? or-
Maybe not without an administrative warrant.
Okay.
If they don't allow us to go, I mean, you can go and ask to inspect.
I just don't
and
want
see
to get
what
shot
they're
at
doing.
first and then,
Right.
yeah.
But then if they say no, you may have to.
If you want to call and ask, I've bought stone from the guy, I can give you a cell phone number.
Okay.
Let's
You
do
just-
that.
I mean, you just, when they're done harvesting rocks, they did tell me they want to sell their property to a developer. But it's a rough one.
I've got a whole pile of rock that they can.
Hey, you can sell it to them, they're harvesting rocks. Yeah.
Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, rise.
Somebody have something.
Oh, yes.
Couple
We
questions.
have a right.
Hey, we had somebody wanting to say something and we skipped.
Sorry, we just
Hi,
skipped
it's okay.
public.
We're under contract on the Horton Parkway home, 416.
416. Which one is that? Oh, okay.
I just had a couple questions if we were able to build a building on that property.
What type of a building?
Like a workshop, no plumbing or water or anything like that.
So we dealt with this a few years ago on Bell Street or Bigger Street. If it's zoned residential, which I think it is,
It's R1.
there's a certain ratio where the size of the garage cannot exceed the size of the home, or is it 50% of the size of the home?
Or is it a square footage?
I think it's either a max square footage on the building or a certain ratio.
He sell house.
I think
It's
it's,
already something.
he tore it down. It was encroaching on a setback, so good job, Joseph.
The one on the corner of Broadview.
Miss Chris is on that.
No, yeah.
Chris Holden's house.
Chris's.
Yeah.
Isn't there already a?
No, he
No,
tore
you
it
got tore
down.
down.
Oh, you got toward that, yeah.
So it's my belief there's either a max size of a shop or garage that you can build, and the max size it's either a set square footage or a certain ratio that relates to the size of your home.
Okay.
I remember that came up either on Broadview or
Right.
Biggers, because they had like a 1,200 square foot house and they wanted to build a 10,000 square foot metal building, and it wasn't
That's
gonna
not
work.
what you're.
No.
No, it'd be like 16.
Let's just.
Yeah, 16 or 32.
I think 16 by 32 would. So you're gonna build it or buy it?
Well,
Well, buy it.
Yeah,
And
just
put it
do it.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it's not, how have we handled that in residential? If it's not on a permanent footer, if it's a movable
Oh,
building,
it's just an album, it's an
I
album.
think you just simply have to keep it within keep it outside of the drainage easements, like don't put it right on the lot line.
Okay.
You did,
I don't even know if you'd have to have
I
a
think
permit
that's
for
all you
that.
have.
don't you have to have a setback, even, I mean, it's not on
Are you
the
gonna
lot
put a
line.
concrete?
I think you have to be either 5 or 10 foot for public utility and drainage easement.
So we had a good question. What
She's
is
got, they're gonna
He's
put
gonna
it
put
on
concrete
concrete, so it would be a permanent.
It'd be a
This will be
permanent.
permanent, so I think it would require permits
Okay.
and all that good stuff. Now, if it's a permanent structure, Todd, you can help me with this. If it's a permanent structure and just recently got that plat redone as its own lot, does it have to be within the building setback envelope of the house, or just need an accessory structure setback?
I think just an accessory.
Which I think is 10 foot.
Yeah, and again, I don't know where on that lot, but assuming it's back behind.
There was 4
So don't place it on a lot line. I think there's a minimum 10-foot setback from the side or the rear, and then the front setback, I don't think it'd be any closer to the road than the front of the house. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then, are we able to fence the property? That's the thing.
It's my belief Chapel Hill doesn't have a fence ordinance. However, if you exceed or eclipse a 6-foot tall fence, it becomes a wind hazard and a liability issue.
It'd be short. It wouldn't be violent or this for if you have little dogs.
I don't think for residential we have a fence. We don't have a fence police. Yeah, it's probably coming.
All right, anything else? If
We have
answered your
chickens.
question?
Oh, I didn't get about that. I didn't know.
Chickens?
Chickens, I don't know if there's anything else.
I don't think we have an ordinance against it.
There is an ordinance on it.
Just a little, just a couple, not a couple. Be a little.
If you get roosters, you'll have complaints, there is an ordinance.
Yeah,
no, yeah, it's,
But we just-
we gotta figure out an ordinance on something, guys, I'm telling you.
There is an ordinance on chickens, I think it's just $100 because it's not. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it is because it's not. I think Chandler's wrong.
I just need to get that put on the plan, right?
Yeah, those corrections, she'll have the area down.
I gotta get the guy who surveyed this, put all that on here.
And you're approved, the attention on just those.
Correct.
Once she signs it.
You go record it. You go register. Hey, Mary, do we record plats or does he go record it after it's signed? We collect the check. I think we collect the check for $70. Hey, Stacy, do we record the plats? I know, it's coming. Just collect the check for $70. Because he's got to make a total amount of information.
I can,
What happens when I make a report? But who in the right mind will do that?
Isaac, I gotta go. Thank you, brother.
So I'm not sure if we recorded it. It's easy.
I still had to get this approved through my mortgage company because I'm making a lot adjustment too.
Yeah. They're gonna make you get another appraisal.
Right, so I gotta get it right. The first step is get you all.
I'm not giving you legal advice. Until you sell something, the mortgage company is
They don't know.
They don't know. You don't even have to tell them. If you go to sell that other half, you get a partial lease.
Right.
Go record the plat. Dave did it. My brother-in-law did it. Yeah, my brother-in-law did it. So, my mother-in-law had 3 acres and gave us. He recorded the plat. They did all that.
You know, I almost got this. So I didn't think you guys
So,
got
record the plat.
because it's traffic.
Your
But
property.
if I pay it off though, I wouldn't have to. So if I still want, I would still.
But if you want to only pay off half of it,
That's when it's gonna be.
that's when you have to do a partial release, because they want to know what the property was worth.
No, I didn't.
Say it's now more valuable. So it's
Somebody had to back down.
I'm not, because if I sell it,
you don't sell it, no.